Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, March the 8th, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy. And we have about a foot of snow on the ground, and there's a snowblower outside, which you're probably hearing. So that's all that is, Joel. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a second while that goes away and tell us how are things going with you.
Well, things are incredibly good here. Fortunately, we don't have a bit of snow on the ground, and we probably are going to get up to about 50 or 60 degrees today. So we're in a little bit better shape than you are for that. But it's things in central Virginia are beautiful. We've had incredible weather. We have tended, it seemed to be a pretty mild winter for us. So, but again, regardless of what is or isn't, it's our interpretation of the events that matter. So it's been a great winter, and we're only shockingly, probably about 13 days away from spring. So
isn't that something?
It's always a new time, a great time.
I mean, that's just crazy to be that close to spring. I mean, there was a time just a few weeks ago where I was like many people thinking, when is spring going to come? And now it's almost here. Right.
And it's just, we've had shows before where we talked about time and the perception of time. And, I'm amazed that my perception of time, and I'm not complaining, life's great, but it's almost like you wake up and then it's spring, then it's summer, and then, it's amazing how fast it goes. And I've heard people say, well, you're not living in the moment when you're doing that. But it really, I do feel I am. I enjoy life so much. It's not that I'm, and I plan on being around for a long time. So I'm glad that it's exciting and fulfilling. And that's sort of our topic today.
Absolutely.
Of living in the now or living in the moment.
Yeah.
And it sort of matches.
Oh, it matches up beautifully. I mean, it all depends on how you look at this stuff. I mean, Louise is thrilled. Here it is, mid-March, and Louise is absolutely thrilled we're getting another snowstorm, probably the biggest one we've had all season. She can't get enough of it. Now, bear in mind, she has a gardening services business that needs to open in about 2 or 3 weeks, but she doesn't care.
Well, it is going to be what it is. And one of the things in life that happen, and you and I are in complete agreement on this, is whether or not we want the snow or we don't want the snow is there. So our interpretation or our understanding, I'm glad Louise has that mindset, even though it would behoove her for there to be no snow on the ground. The fact that there is, she's enjoying it. That's sort of the point of life. Metaphorically, there's always going to be snow on the ground or not, and it's our response to it is what matters.
Interestingly, I asked her last night, why does she like having snow so much? And I thought it was going to be an answer of, well, she likes to go cross-country skiing. That's her new thing to do in the wintertime. But that wasn't her answer at all. Her answer was, it makes everything look pretty.
Yes. And in fact, I've heard other people say that there's a sound, there's an insulation of when snow's on the ground, and whether it's subtle, but it changes sounds in the environment. It makes everything, it insulates sound. It's when there's no wind and there's a foot of snow on the ground and there's sun out, you can have that moment where it's closest to silence as you can get in nature at times, because it does insulate a lot of sound and there's not a lot of movement. And so it is absolutely beautiful. If it's here, I can enjoy the beauty of it, and it's not here, and I'm certainly enjoying the lack of it. So either way, it's a good thing to do. But I was taken this week in particular about, so many of the people that I'm working with have historical knowledge that defeats them. It is false information. It's experiences they've had that puts them in such a negative place because they live in the past. They live in what happened, and the living in the now, living in the present moment is such a part of the law of attraction because it appreciates where you're at right now. And we've talked about this in many different forms and fashion over the times that we do in shows together. But I'm really seeing just how much power exists in now and how powerless it is to be living in yesterday or the fear of tomorrow. And one of the manifestation things that I don't know if you remember, this is hilarious to me and almost called you over the week during the last Thursday show. One of the examples I was using was, an IRS letter, getting an IRS letter. When I checked the mail after the show, I had a letter from the IRS.
Oh, really?
I literally laughed. I said, oh my goodness, we were just talking. Now it was a benign letter. It was acknowledging my new federal ID tax number and all this, but I laughed because we talked about getting the IRS letter and then dreading it and opening it up and whatever it is. And, so within that, I unintentionally attracted an IRS letter last week.
That's pretty wild.
And it had no bearing on anything, but it is about that moment where we can have an event happen 20 years ago and it has power, and we can view it as trauma. We can view it as whatever we want to view it as, but it is a powerful event that happened in our life, and it sticks with us and it drives us, and it really can debilitate us. And that one event, it creates factors in today versus the idea that we have 365 days a year nothing goes crazy wrong, and one day that something goes really crazy wrong. It's that one event that sticks with us, and it turns us in. It flags itself as oh my God, I don't ever want that to happen again. And it just, you think about that, and we have these past memories, and we have the fear of the future, and most fear of the future is based on historical things that we perceive have gone wrong in the past. And being stuck in the middle of all that is so difficult because right now, at this moment, things are fine. No matter what's going on in your life at this moment, we're fine. And if you can appreciate that the law of attraction responds to your emotions and your feelings and all the stuff, the vibration, and when your vibration is everything's fine, you're getting more back of that. Everything's good. But when you're worried about tomorrow, worry is its own vibration, and the law of attraction is very capable of bringing all the things in the world you want to worry about if you allow that to happen. And that it's such a relevant piece to how to functionally use the law of attraction is living in the moment, being at the moment and being conscious of how good things are right now.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing to worry. It's amazing because and I've talked about it with a number of the co-hosts lately, there doesn't seem to be any useful purpose for worry. I keep looking for one. I mean, it exists, and lots of people experience it, but what is its purpose? I'm not really sure. Have you ever been able to figure out what the purpose of worry is?
Well, my theory is, worry does, at least it has origin of purpose. I think the idea that we do need to be cognitively aware of what's happening. I think the underlying thing of, there is a car going down the road at 100 miles an hour. I don't need to step in the middle of the road. I need to be concerned about that. I think there's a base of worry that keeps us safe. There's an instinct, I don't need to go into, a burning building, or, that stove is burning red hot. I probably don't need to touch the burner. I think there's an origin of caution, but our society and as humans, as we have grown, back in probably the origins of worry. Again, you're in the middle of the wilderness, and you're the caveman days, and all of a sudden this massive tiger is chasing you. Well, you probably better be worried about that. That's a concern. I need to walk
I'm not sure
cautiously.
I'm not sure I want to be worried about it. I think I probably run as fast as possible, but worry's going to slow me down.
Right. Well, but the worry piece, the origins of worry, is probably enough to keep you aware of your environment. If you didn't have any concern, you would be surprised. You'd be like, oh my God, I'm at a watering hole at dawn, drinking out of the pond, and I'm shocked that this tiger is now ripping my shoulder off. Worry puts you in position to survey your environment, see where you're at, and take caution. I know the parental instinct for moms is there's a reason that moms worry about things. It's a protective force for their kids. They need to scan the horizon for problems and prevent them. Now that's the origins. We talk about the origins.
Right.
But the The current day value is, I completely agree. We have, like anything else, the reason worry existed a long time ago doesn't really have much sense now. And what happens is worry becomes a thing itself, and it releases a bunch of chemicals. There's fight or flight responses, and there's stress chemicals that go along with worry. And it's a very debilitating thing. But I also think that worry for some people is an addictive event. It has addiction attached to it because the chemicals released, while they are nasty and unsettling, they do give people some feeling of comfort. I know people that my mom, who passed away last year, great lady. I love her very much, but her big thing in life is worry. And she worried about, she would just create things to worry. Now, I know her history and the trauma as a child growing up in an alcoholic family. So I know where she needed to worry in her mind. Worry would somehow help her get through the evening. When she'd get home, her drunk father would be there. She didn't need to have friends over because he's going to be raising hell with everybody. So worry played a role in her perception was worry kept trouble at bay. Now, worry doesn't do any of that, but it's her perception.
Right.
As a society, we're taught to worry. The Weather Channel wants you to worry, not because they really care about you, but if there's a hurricane coming, you're going to watch the Weather Channel. Their ratings are going to go up. They're going to charge more. The Weather Channel needs hurricanes to make money. So they sell worry. Now, be careful.
Well, snowstorms also work too. Snowstorms are great advertising sellers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I look at, for example, last year we had a major hurricane that was bearing down on Florida. And, it's one of those, it was one of those really bad ones. It was going to hit Florida as a Category 4. And if it hit Tampa Bay at a certain angle, they were estimating, there'd be a 12-foot tide surge and the entire Tampa Bay area could be wiped out. And there was panic and everybody left the area. And it came up Florida and had ironically, it had a reverse effect. Instead of blowing a bunch of water up into Tampa Bay, it sucked all the water out of Tampa Bay. And for the first time, there was no water in Tampa Bay. It was almost sort of funny that everybody's worried about this flooding, and you have the entire Tampa Bay dry with fish flopping around. And then, of course, the next worry was when all the water is going to come rushing back and flood the area. It didn't. It just came in and filled up again. But the concept of worry was originally intended, I believe, as just a cautionary sort of survival technique. But over the years has no real value today. In fact, it has a reverse. It isn't a benign thing. Worry is one of the most destructive patterns that us modern day humans have, because we worry constantly about things, and societal norms are to worry and talk about problems and do that. And we deal with this every week. That's sort of the law of attraction at work in the opposite way. Worry, that old saying that you hear me say often, worry is actually praying for what you don't want.
That's true. Yeah. In fact, I'm remembering as you're talking about this, something that the science fiction novelist Robert Heinlein invented for one or more of his novels. I know he used it in at least a couple of places. He invented a little child's rhyme to describe the whole worry situation and kind of to make fun of it at the same time. And the rhyme went like this: when in peril or in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Well, I use this with clients all the time. Like, and they know me well enough to appreciate I'm not being evil when I do this. But I will say stuff like, well, let's worry about it some more. Let's see how that helps.
That's right.
And and they're like, what? I go, well, let's spend the next part of the hour worrying about this problem. and they'll respond to me like, well, that's not effective at all. Exactly. But you almost have to have this awakening to see what you're doing with that. And we as sort of like our appendix, the organ that is not a necessary organ today. there was a time it was part of the immune system, and they estimate that it could have played a bigger role than it does today. But as our evolution happened, it didn't really need to exist. I mean, you could take it out and not really have any difference in life. Mm-hmm. So the appendix had a reason. Worry is the appendix of emotion, I call it.
That's a good way to look at
it. At some point, there's origins in it, but in today's world, there is really no survey, because we're not facing those. Doesn't mean we don't have things to be concerned about, but the evolution of worry is this preoccupation with what you're feeling is an inevitable negative event happening, when in reality, I like to have the opposite. I like to have a preoccupation with the inevitable positive event happening. I know it's going to work out, and so I try to do the opposite of worry. I don't know exactly what that term is, but I like to feel that, and that's sort of what's happened in my life. I'm anticipating the next best thing. No matter what happens, then the good event coming out of that is going to be exciting and positive. So I live that way, and that's sort of the law of attraction at work. If you really boil the law of attraction, this is it. I mean, as far as what we're trying to focus on, helping people understand the power of now, or the concepts of living in the now. This has been talked about for, from Buddha times, way before that. Even the ancient philosophers clearly saw where this is an important thing to live right now. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. The past is not relevant at all, but right now. But we as humans have evolved to these worry characters that, and I don't know, and this, I was going to get your input on this too. Is this more of a United States thing, or is it? And I know other cultures, but I happen to know a lot of like Russian friends, and they don't worry about anything. They're just prepared for what, they've been through so much. Their concept in life is, whatever happens, we're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And the house burns down, no problem. Let's finish our workout. We'll get a new house after the workout. That's sort of my Russian friends' view on life. My American friends are, let's worry about everything that can go wrong and be prepared for the outcome. Now, I don't know if it's just cultural or what, and that would be an interesting study for a philosopher.
I have no idea. I mean, it's a good question, and I don't really have a good answer for it. The only thing I have an answer for you is you asked what might be the opposite of worry, and my submission might be relax.
Possibly. And why I say possibly, not to be disagreeable, but no. I think worry is an active state. It's more of a frantic state. To me, relax is like, it's like, I'm cool. But it's not a I like that frantic positive on the other side.
Looking for frantic positive? Okay. So something more like exhilaration.
Exhilaration, or relaxed on steroids, or caffeinated relaxed.
Relaxed on steroids. I love that.
yeah.
That's funny.
But you get my point. Worry is this frantic preoccupation. When you're relaxed, you're like, oh, this feels great. And you're not really in that state of much. Whereas as that exhilarated, I'm actively, I love the day. I love to see what happens in the day. I'm looking forward to the next event. Amazing things continue to happen, and living in that is that vortex that the Abraham and that crew talk about. Living in that vortex and that field. To me, that is, for those that don't understand, that's more of to me, living in the vortex is the opposite of the of worry, but that's okay. that doesn't match with most people's understanding.
No, well, actually, our listeners are fairly sophisticated. We found they're pretty well up to date on what the law of attraction and current teachings are. So I wouldn't be surprised if most of them know what the vortex is. But that's interesting. Something also came up yesterday when I was talking with Wendy during the afternoon podcast, and I promised I would ask you about it, see what you think. We were talking about a section from the book, The Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham. And in that section, Wendy made a comment that essentially said, when we are taking control of our emotional set point and moving ourselves up and down that scale. I mean, Abraham usually talks about moving up and down incrementally, so you can, because it's too far to reach to do a big jump. But she said it actually is possible to jump from, say, on a scale of 1 to 10, jump from like a 1 to a 6 or a 1 to a 7 instantly. The problem, she says, is that if you haven't spent any time on the intermediary steps in between them, you're just as likely to fall back down to 1. And that led me to think, well, that sounds a lot like bipolarism. And we were wondering together, is it possible that a bipolar person is somebody who's never really spent a lot of time on the intermediary steps? So I said, well, I'll ask Joel. Joel's got psychotherapeutic training. Let's see what he has to say. So what do you think? Is that part of what bipolar is about?
Well, I think for some people it absolutely could be. Let's always have our disclaimer. Bipolar is a real condition that is diagnosed and needs to be dealt with a psychiatrist. However, I do believe there are many people that are considered bipolar that are misdiagnosed as wrong, and possibly that's the exact point. I have a colleague that is he's a traditional therapist that has recently been exposed to the law of attraction and he's relatively new to it, loves the concept, and is maybe one of the most efficient manifestors I've ever seen.
Really?
He's great at it. Amazing. However, supporting what you're saying, because he hasn't dealt with it long, he can manifest up to a 9 or 10 using a scale, like getting that boom, and then all of a sudden back down to a 2. So it is sort of like a muscle memory for using a physical type thing. I do believe exactly that the more you're versed at it, there's I'll use a bodybuilder or a weightlifting analogy. Is for years I've been lifting weights, and there's a term called muscle memory. And once you build muscle, even if you quote unquote lose it, you build it back faster. If you say you took 2 years off, you reduce down to a normal size. I've seen bodybuilders do this. If they start back bodybuilding again, they get their muscle back 10 times faster than somebody just starting building it. It's already been built. Now, I don't know if that's a law of attraction they're anticipating, they know it better, or there is really a muscle memory. But it's that same concept here that if you sort of toil through it, like I feel, toil is a bad negative connotation to it, but you sort of work your way through it, I do think you develop a better foundation, and that you could go up and down the scale at a quicker pace, or go up the scale at a quicker pace. But the more, if you haven't done it in that middle work, your tendency to slide back down happens very quick. And I noticed that for me early. While I don't think it's bipolar in nature, it would appear to be bipolar. I would be really up, and I can remember one time in particular, I just moved up to Virginia and had a lot of stuff happening. My son, Chris, was having some difficult times. And I was really just new in the practice, really into the law of attraction, really positive, even though I had some negative stuff at the new job I had at the time. I'm still looking at the positive of the job. And, I'm working really hard. And then my son, Chris, just had a total meltdown at school, threatening. I mean, he hadn't been to school a week, and they were threatening to kick him out already. And it was just this mess. And I remember walking in until I heard that news, going from feeling like a 9 or a 10 to all the way down. This is useless. This doesn't work. And it immediately down to a 1 or a 2. Mm-hmm. So it was this almost bipolar feeling shift to it. While I'm not bipolar, obviously, it had that feeling. So I will go on and state the hypothesis and agreeing here that I do believe there are people that are probably thinking or diagnosed as bipolar, and that is an inaccurate diagnosis when it would be more of what you're talking about. Does that answer the question?
Okay. Sure, yeah, that's an interesting answer. We really had no idea how to answer it, because obviously we're not trained in the psychotherapeutic sciences, so I mean we've never studied any of that stuff. So that's really interesting. It had not occurred to me there could actually be people who are misdiagnosed, who are actually just people who haven't really learned how to do the intermediary steps.
Well, and I think there's so many people. Again, these are just random what my observations are. I think of the population, just using the United States because it's the group that I've worked with, obviously. I would say people that are in truly a real clinical depression probably run 1 or 2% of the population at most.
Okay.
1 or 2%. However, the population is often diagnosed at more of a 10 to 12% ratio of people with depression. And I think that it again, this is a theory and not fact. I think it's misdiagnosed as, versus a clinical depression that is chemically imbalanced that needs a medication component versus someone who life has created this feeling of helplessness and you're depressed because of that. It's not a lack of, it's like my story about the young man that we talked about that was in foster care that his mom passed away. He was being treated with Prozac for depression. Well, Prozac was doing very little to help his mom not die in prison.
Right.
It didn't help that at all. Once he focused and understood all of that, he, as an individual, defeated what they thought was depression. It was never depression. It was his own, and he's in complete control of that. And I think that reframing or reviewing, we talk about this all the time, redoing your thoughts of the past or what you're viewing or is compounded. Well, everybody in this kid's orbit kept saying, well, how does it feel for your mom to have your mom die while you're in foster care and she's in prison? Well, I mean, he saw 20 therapists that asked him that same question. And of course he's like, well, surely you're depressed because of that. Well, he was depressed. Certainly his mom died. He was very sad, but it isn't clinical depression that can be helped with a chemical. It isn't a lack of serotonin that caused him to feel negative. It's not that didn't cause it.
Right.
It was caused by a severe traumatic loss in his life. For anybody to lose their parent at any age is hard. It's compounded the fact he was 8 years old when it happened, and triply compounded that he was in foster care and had very little emotional support when it did happen. However, his incredible resilience and ability to determine all this, he cured himself of that.
Wow, that's great.
He did. And so that's sort of the same concept here with that, ability to live in now fixes things. The ability to really look at where you're at fixes things because it's not reliant on a historical view or a fear of the future view.
So if you're trying to become more of a live in the now person, let's say you've bought into the idea, okay, I get it. Living in the now is where I should be. It's really where my only power is. And yet I continue to be haunted. My subconscious mind continues to throw at me all these memories about bad experiences that happened in my past. Well, how am I supposed to deal with that when I'm trying to live in the now?
Well, there's multiple ways of dealing with it, but I think, Dr. Wayne Dyer used to really be into tapping before he passed away. I don't know if I know you are, but I don't know if our audience is real familiar with that. But it's the concept, it's sort of a form of acupuncture, but you don't use the needles. There's meridians in the body, and you tap on these meridians while you're focused on the negativity. And this is a way of relieving it. But there's also, there's meditations, there's, cognitive behavioral therapy and coaching where you really sort of walk through, where you're at. The idea that events happen. I don't argue with anyone where you've been. One of my examples is a lady that came to me that had spent many years with a psychiatrist trying to determine whether her father molested her or not. And my initial reaction, or my initial statement to her was sort of offensive, and I didn't mean it to be. I said, well, let's just choose a side and move on. And it wasn't that I was minimalizing her trauma, but she had wasted years on a discussion of something that had happened or not happened, and not really and not living in now about things, not living with today, and she lost years of her life in that debate that he had passed away. If she was molested, there's certainly stuff she needs to work on and deal with the emotional side of that. But the debate of whether it happened or not exhausted her for years. And once she was able to, just say, okay, well, let's just say it happened. What do we do? And I hooked her with a trauma therapist. We continued life coaching, and she's thriving today by moving on from it instead of stuck in it. And so things happen, but us using today is reframing is a term that I use in life coaching all the time, where look where we're at. We're stuck. This happened. You know, I talked about me eating out of a trash can in the middle of my addiction as a horrible event. I have reframed that event because of a lot of things that have happened. And I don't view that, you know, while I don't want to eat out of a trash can again, it's certainly not the event that it was because of other things that have happened in my life. So things happen, and I can either get stuck in them or release them today. One of the most effective pills I could ever develop, which doesn't exist, by the way, and if I could give you a magical pill that would just delete your perceived negative events in your life and the things that slow you down today, all the failures that have kept you from performing, if I could give you that pill and you just delete all that, you'd be, oh my God, that would be great. I wouldn't have this baggage and I could move on. Well, we're voluntarily holding on to that baggage. You don't need that pill. We have that pill. It's right inside of us. And that's that ability to get in there, living in today. What is relevant? When I was, 10 years old, this happened. Okay, it's relevant in my development today, but, it's where I'm at going forward. I have people that have had horrible childhood experiences that were stuck in them, but I reframe it and say, look what you overcome. Look what you've overcome. Look how you've defeated that. I challenge you. Well, it's never an event that's, no traumas were good that happened as a child. It did make you the person that you are today. I know an incredible lady that lives in the Reno area that I did coaching with for years that had a horrible adoptive mother. She was, I would almost describe her as evil in what she did to her daughter. However, when she reframed that and she looked at it and she said, my mother unintentionally created one of the strongest people to ever walk the face of the earth because I refused to give in to that. I am stronger because of what I went through as a child. She reframed that and almost instantly reprogrammed her current situation by looking at what the event made her. She survived hell and is still alive today.
That's really something.
That's resilience.
Yeah. Well, it points to the idea that, like you said, it probably isn't the best idea to completely eradicate the memories, because the memories are how she understands, for instance, and how you understand with your own life, how it is and what it is that you did to overcome adversity. And in that sense, it made you stronger. So you really don't want to lose that memory. What we're really talking about is wanting to remove the sting of the memory. We don't want the memory to torture us.
Yes.
Because when you take away the sting, now it's like, that happened, but it doesn't hurt anymore.
Well, and I'll also even take it a step further. Not only taking away the sting, which is a great way of putting it, but I want to take it and say, not only did that event, it was at hell, and it's not hell anymore, the sting's gone, I can see where it was a necessary event to make me the person I am today. So I need that. I needed that event in my evolution of life. I wouldn't be the man I am today without the horrible hell I went through my addiction. I don't want to do it again, that's for sure.
Sure.
But at the same time, I can celebrate I survived that walk. Whatever life has for me today, it's silly to think that I can't overcome that.
True.
When you pull yourself out from the garbage can eating days, and you live in today, and my problem today is I don't even know, I can't even think of an example to use of I don't have anything to even talk about, but whatever life's going to bring me, I have 100% track record of dealing with everything. I'm going to continue that. That's, I have it covered. I'm strong enough I don't fear it. And within that is a great power. And that's that reframing process of everything that you've been through was part of your, you can make it part of your journey, or you can allow it to defeat you. It's, you know, I shared a while back, what was it, a month or two ago, I was at the Social Security office, and
Oh, right.
I was watching people get their disability and you know, and talk about their disability, and they're, you know, they can't get another job because of their disability. And it's just this negative. And my statement of the biggest disability that they had was being on disability.
Yes.
Because it really was glorifying their trauma to a point of, well, I'm going to get money and medical coverage because of my disability. And I always give the disclaimer, there were people there that are in true need of help, and I'm not talking about it. I mean, these were severely, profoundly mentally disabled people and physically disabled people. That's a different category. But I'm talking, you know, I would, again, not judging any one condition, but I was hearing people talk about, well, I have this, you know, I have fibromyalgia, I have chronic stress syndrome, I have this, and they won't give me my disability. And I so desperately want to say, oh my God, you, that's why I had my headset on. Cause I almost couldn't help but not comment on some of that. Let me walk you through that process, because, I don't want you to be disabled. And it isn't that that's causing your disability. It's your perception of that that's causing your disability.
We did a show early this week, Monday afternoon. Cindy Chavez actually joined Wendy and I to do the show because I'd found a post on Facebook by a woman who is an ex-Muslim, self-described ex-Muslim, and she was recently exploring law of attraction, but she was disturbed by some stuff that she had seen that Abraham had said, and perceived it as blaming the victim, and that we're holding the victim accountable for, you know, getting raped or attacked or, you know, whatever it might be. And so we did a show about that one, and it's a tough show to do. It's a very tough one. But what you're bringing in here actually adds another element that we kind of touched on, but we didn't really touch on a lot, which is, how do you perceive what happens after the fact? How do you deal with it? Yes, the fact was terrible. Yes, it should not have happened. But how do you deal with it afterward? And that's that aspect of victimhood that I think we just kind of overlooked inadvertently, but it's an important one.
Yes. Well, if there was ever, everybody that we deal with, from my perspective of the law of attraction, the one sticking point, and for me included, by the way, was the concept of blaming the victim. Mm-hmm. I don't know of anyone that in their process of looking at how the law of attraction works, it's like, okay, we're blaming the victim. And we've talked about the concept of blame before.
Yeah.
It isn't, blame is the human version of it. Blame is, you know, it is the Perry Mason court case where we're going to figure out who's at fault here. And in the law of attraction is again, emotionless. It isn't trying to blame. It doesn't care. Mm. It doesn't. I use this example all the time. You know, I'm an avid weightlifter, and one of the things that I've always, and I see where I can equate my weightlifting to the law of attraction and how it works, is a 200 or a 315 pound deadlift. That's a thing where you just pick 315 pounds off the ground. That weight, it doesn't care if you're disabled. It doesn't care if you're smart. It doesn't care if you're stupid. It doesn't care what's going on in your life. Either you're going to pick it up or not.
Pretty much. That's it.
It's not negotiable. That's it. And 315 pounds was 315 pounds in 1950, in 1850, in 1650. It has never changed. It's no different, so that the measurement remains the same. Well, I can't do this because my knee hurts. And the barbell basically says, I don't care. I don't care. It's irrelevant that you can't do it because your knee hurts. Yeah. If you either move me or you don't. And I have seen people with one arm lift it. I've seen people with one leg lift it. I've seen a young man with Down syndrome, that had worked his way up to doing that. I've seen people with severe disabilities lift it, and it didn't care. It just was there. And that's the law of attraction. So you get you can get stuck on blame, or you can get, here's where we're at. And I don't like the fact that, that we as society have become a blame-based system where we're looking for who's at fault, and we're going to, hold this accountable and do this and argue about who said what and do what. It's irrelevant. That's one of the first things I do in counseling with families. We can spend, I make $100 an hour in sessions, and I can spend the next 3 weeks every day arguing about who's at fault. If you want to do that, I can make a lot of money doing that. I don't want to waste your time or mine. We're moving forward. The concept of blame is not relevant to today. To our topic of right now, blame isn't relevant. We are what we are. We did what we did. We're a product of our decisions at the end of the day. Have people set out to harm us? Absolutely, that they have, and our interpretation of that participated, but it's all not relevant to where we're at. It's like we said, we talk. It seems like I don't have a week that goes by that I don't bring up gravity. But
all right,
I'm on a 100-story building in New York City cleaning the window, and I don't tighten my safety strap right, and I slip and fall. Gravity doesn't go, God, it's not his fault. He forgot to do that. I'm not going to pull him to the ground now. I don't see anybody running around going, that damn gravity. It's not fair. It's blaming the victim here. Gravity. That man didn't do anything to deserve the fall. I don't hear anybody having that discussion. And it's the same thing. And I'm not trying to minimize people's trauma, and I'm not trying to minimize what people have been through, but understanding that our response to what we've been through is our decision. It is, and no matter who you are, it is our decision. I have a very it's very unpopular in today's belief system for a lot of people. But my son Justin, who's doing extremely well, he's 12 now, and in October he's going to be 13. And I adopted him, and I've seen him thrive in the last year and a half that he's been with me.
Fantastic.
But we've had a couple of moments, and where he came home one day and he says, "Dad, I'm being bullied at school." And I said, "Well, that's an interesting choice." And he was like, well, what? And I said, "Well, I don't know why you would choose to be bullied." And he goes, No, you don't understand. Somebody's bullying me. And I said, again, that's an interesting choice. It takes two people to be bullied. A person to bully you and another one to allow it to happen. Well, that is so against what they're teaching in schools and all this.
True.
And I'm not, and trust me, I'm not about kids picking on kids. I'm not in favor of that. But at the end of the day, it is if you can call me what you want to, my response to it is up to me. If somebody physically attacks you, as we walk through this process with him, I said, "Son, if somebody pushes you, you will follow the school's rules. You go tell the teacher. You do what you need to do with that. If the teacher doesn't do anything and this continues, then the next time he pushes you, I want you to take your fist and start punching his face until he is on the ground. Don't stop until somebody pulls you off. And you will not be bullied. You will not have to accept that. You will follow their rules, but if they don't do it," she said, "but I will get in trouble." I said, "Then that's my job as dad to go do that, to take care of you, to advocate for you, because you don't have to go through." Now, that is not, I'm not suggesting anybody follow that. That is my personal belief and that's what the law of attraction teaches me. It is, I don't want him to, and he will be in severe trouble on restriction forever if he starts it, or if he's the bully. That is not something that I tolerate from him.
Right.
But how we respond to things are in our control. One of his questions was, well, what if he's bigger than me and gets beat up? I said, well, we'll deal with that too. But at least I promise you, he won't do that often if you stand up to him. Even if you lose a fight, you won't. Let's look at it that way. Well, he's not had that problem, and he hasn't had to fight because he hasn't fallen into the role of that victimhood with it. And it's just, and he's, I explained to him, I said, "You're a gold medal winner in Taekwondo." And he is. He's great at Taekwondo and sparring and all that. I said, so you don't need to use that, but I need the confidence that comes with that. You don't have to accept it either. And it's resonated well with him. Mm-hmm. And again, that goes against where everybody's at today. We have become, in my opinion, we have unintentionally become a society that glorifies and reinforces victimhood.
Yes, I agree completely.
It's terrible, and I usually I would love to be on the upslope and the positive toward the end of the show, and I don't want to go backwards, but that is a point. But that's what I want to celebrate with now. The power of now allows me not whatever has happened is only as relevant as I allow it to be. Mm-hmm. And that's today, right now, at this moment. I have an incredible life. As I'm scanning to give an example of something negative a second ago, I couldn't come up with anything. I don't even have the thing to tell you I'm sort of worried about. It doesn't happen. And that's a beautiful place to be in. I have no ear. My health is wonderful. My relationship with my son is amazing. I love my career. Financially, I'm in great shape. I don't have anything to worry about. My biggest challenge is I need service on my car in the next week. And I just got to schedule that. So that's my big thing right now. It's like
I could tell it's just eating you up alive too. I mean, it's just destroying you.
And I have a service. This is even more disgusting. All I have to do now, because it's a new service that my car dealership offers, I just got to call them. They have a key, and they come get the car, service it, and bring it back to me.
So your hardship is that you just don't have a car for an hour.
Well, no, I have another vehicle.
Oh, you
I'll just drive that vehicle. So you get my point. That's it. That's all I got. And but this is one of the things that I'm finding amazing about now, living in now. When things seem to be overwhelming, one of the tools that I try to have everybody bring to the table is let me revert back to right now. Whatever I'm fearing that is going to happen may or may not come true. It doesn't matter, because right now I'm okay. What happened to me as a child or last week, or I might lose my job or all this, or it's not relevant right now. I'm going to run out of money in 6 weeks, but it's not relevant right now. Wherever we get to, if you can revert to now, all of your power, everything that we have in life exists in right now, this moment.
Well, you talked about how how society promotes victimhood unintentionally, and I think we can kind of cut to the core of it right now with a question about what you just said. Isn't it true, I'm playing devil's advocate, isn't it true that if you're just going to live right now, you're really keeping your head buried in the sand? Because that's what most people would say who are promoting this, unintentionally promoting victimhood in society.
Right. Well, and I've heard that argument. If you're living in the moment right now and not doing anything about the things that are in your direct control, you're probably right. But what I believe in living in right now is today my goal is I want to work on the things that are in my direct control. I'm going to work. I don't need to say, well, things are so great, I don't need to go to work ever again. I don't need to do that because that's not living in now. Living in now means take care of what's here today, right now. Put your power, what you're thinking of me is irrelevant. What I'm thinking of me is relevant. I can't control you. I can't control what my boss is going to do. I can't control what my kid's going to do. One of my neighbors asked a question the other day. I think every parent of a boy asks this question at some point. Boys don't like to wear, they want to wear shorts year round and don't want to wear jackets when it's 30 degrees. Mm-hmm. And that's just what boys do. I don't know why. I don't either. I'm wearing shorts when it's snowing. I'm a big guy too. So she asked the question, her son, I think, is 7 and, transitioning from the age where, it's hard for a mom to go to that next stage. She said, this was a Facebook question. Does anyone else make their son wear a jacket or make their kid wear a jacket? And my response is, it's an illusion that you can make them. You can make them leave the car with it on, but they're not going to keep it on. So, quit the battle, stop the battle. That's not his response with the jacket is out of your control. You're not a bad parent if he's not wearing a jacket. You can send it to him. Justin, if they say it's cold, I'm not wearing a jacket. No problem. Don't call me in the middle of the day saying you're cold. That's your problem. You made that decision. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to sit there and get his argument. So yes, if you're doing nothing about the things that are in your control, that is escapism. That's not living in now. Living in now is actively working on the things in your control to manifest the law. My next book, by the way, will be The Law of Action. And that's what I talk about. Taking action today about the relevant stuff. That's what's taking care of the future. But it's not worrying about yesterday. It's not, I have never been able to successfully take a test or do something. If that's my mindset, I got a test to take today, and I put the test off, that's irrelevant. That's where I get invaded. Mm-hmm. I'm going to aggressively take that test. I'm going to study for the test. I'm going to do the things I need to do. I need to go to work today. I need to develop new clients. I need to do I didn't wake up today saying, I am so contented today, I'm not going to do the LOA Today show. Yes. That isn't how it worked. Yeah. I didn't wake up. I'm excited about doing the LOA. That's in my control. What we do today is almost didn't connect with you this morning.
We had trouble with that.
But we were able to connect. Yeah, we were able to connect, and we have this incredible show going today. I feel very positive about our show. This is in our control, Walt, and that's what we're selling. Now isn't about burying your hand in it. Now is about action of things in your direct control. That's today. I can't do something about tomorrow, but I can do something about today.
Something I've seen a couple times on Facebook lately, particularly in a Law of Attraction group that I pay attention to. I've seen two or three people posting about how they have an exam coming up. They haven't studied for it, but they want to do well on it, and they're asking how can they use the Law of Attraction to do well on it.
Well, and that's where people, I think, misuse the Law of Attraction. Of course, you're going to use a positive thought, but the Law of Attraction is about, if I want the Law of Action that is necessary portion of the Law of Attraction is to do if I want to do good on a test, I need to study for the test. I'm currently working on a doctorate in metaphysics. Mm-hmm. And I have had probably 20 exams so far, over 2,000 questions, and I've missed one.
Wow, very good.
And I still think I'm right on that one. But that's difficult. Anyway, I have evidence. I have a 99 point. I forget what it is, but it's 99.93 something in the class, and that didn't happen because of the Law of Attraction. In the way that people say it. The Law of Attraction tells me what's in my control, and the Law of Action is I study every day. I read the material. I listen to podcasts of the material. I have like 4 or 5 formats I can do. I listen to YouTube videos on the material. I take action that matches what I'm seeking. Where the Law of Attraction, I think most people get stuck, is your action has to match what you're trying to seek. When you're taking action by not taking action. I have a test coming up, haven't studied. How do I use the Law of Attraction to get a good grade? Well, no, you're talking how do I use magic? Because Law of Attraction is not magic. It's a law. The Law of Attraction requires us to have matching actions. You cannot believe that you're financially secure and you go around feeling like you don't have any money or you're desperate all the time and complaining about your have. That's not an action matching. And, you have to have the idea of me performing and doing the things in my control. And that match, what you're talking about is exactly about today. Mm-hmm. Right now, today, if I want to do good on a test next week, I need to be studying today. It isn't meant to, the Law of Attraction is about doing work in a positive manner, but not being distracted by the things that it needs you to take action. The idea that I'm going to sit on my couch and manifest everything. I'm not saying it's not possible, but deep down, part of the belief system, if you look at, the 12 universal laws, one of them is there has to be this act There has to be a matching perception of what goes on. The ocean moving back and forth is actually a motion that creates a lot of things. It's a necessary movement. A stagnant ocean wouldn't create what it creates. A stagnant person, in the law of attraction, you're not taking the action to make the manifestation happen. And that's why it's so important.
As you were describing that, a thought was going through my head that hadn't occurred to me before, but it seems like the obvious question to ask one of these people, which is, if you're not studying for the test and you're hoping that the law of attraction is going to somehow miraculously give you a good grade on it, which means that you're getting the good grade without actually knowing the material, why are you taking the class in the first place? What's the point?
Right. Well, and that's my complete belief that what are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to use the law of attraction to not get, take the steps as you're supposed to do. If you want to take a class, you want to take it to learn it, to understand it. I want to know everything. The reason I'm taking this metaphysics, part of metaphysics is the law of attraction. It's the category of which is, and I love the whole everything. There's a lot more to it, but I love learning all this stuff. I want to, now a lot of the stuff, well, I'll be honest with you, is stuff I don't really particularly have a deep interest in, but it's part of the concept and I need to learn it. And I need to take action to go forward. Like, some of the stuff involved is paranormal stuff that I'm like, I don't really necessarily get into that.
Yeah.
But I'm open to the concept. I've always, I'll hear what they have to say. So I'm wanting us to understand the power of now requires a matching action. That's Mike Dooley speaks about that a lot. It isn't about sitting on your butt and just hoping. It's about an entire feeling and emotion. And when you take the physical steps necessary to get what you want to get, then you believe that that's a real possibility. Then you really then are feeling what you're doing. And then that's the emotion that's put out there. Then it becomes self-fulfilling. It really, if I'm living in Antarctica and I want to open a jet ski rental place.
Okay.
It's not a matching action. It's not matching. I'm not going to play. It's unlikely that at the South Pole, I'm going to be renting many jet skis. So an action necessary, if I'm hell-bent on renting jet skis, I'm going to need to go to an environment where jet skis are needed. And there's people that want to rent them. That's common sense.
Well, there's one thing lacking today is common sense, but I understand your point. Common sense is in short supply these days.
Well, you can't. You can't hope and not take action to match it and expect there to be. So the idea, I want to pass a test and never ever study for it. It's valueless at that point. You're not believing that's a rational thing. The law of attraction is going to dismiss that entirely.
Yeah. You really need to take a look at what your motivations are for taking the class in the first place, because they aren't adding up to anything that makes any sense. Absolutely true.
Exactly.
Well, we got about a minute and a quarter left. I just wanted to, first of all, mention if you have not subscribed and shared, please do so. All the instructions on how to do it are right on the homepage, loatoday.net. If you haven't been there, go take a visit. It's all right there. Also, if you decide you want to call in sometime, that's how you do it. You use the Zoom platform. It's all right there. Very simple. In fact, we've made it about as simple as we know how to make it at this point in time. So nothing more to be said. There it is. And Joel, if somebody's looking for a little more personal assistance, how do they reach out to you?
My website is joelelston.com. I have joelelston@gmail is my email address. I've had some recent people responding to the show with some great feedback, and I really appreciate that. Special mention to a lady named Elizabeth who reached out to us, and I really appreciated your email, and I responded. Hope you got that. So we really are touching a lot of people with this. I'm very excited about where this is going. I do think this is our year.
Well, then let's do it again next week. What do you say?
Plan on it, my friend.
All right. Well, I do too. And we hope you all will join us as well next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.